I'm glad
Listen,
we
I don't
co-
think, huh?
I was saying, I'm glad we've come to a common ground on Bruce Arena as the home run answer, but we don't know if it's allowed.
Bruce Arena is the home run answer for every team. Like, I would take him over Pineda in a second in Atlanta, but I don't think that's going to happen, unfortunately. I'm a little bit worried that Atlanta's going to be like rubbing their hands, being like, all right, we're going to go Pineda to Gary Smith now. And I'm a little bit worried we're gonna be stuck in the Nashville mediocrity shoes.
Well, you know who wishes they could get back to at least mediocrity?
Canada.
That's Canada. Goodness me, are they down bad? I read in a little bit more about their situation, and I mean they're commenting on influencer Instagram posts for bathwater down bad. That's how down bad they are.
What is the context behind that? What do you mean?
Don't worry about it.
How do I not worry about that? Who are they commenting on?
It's a
Are
it's
they
a
trying to
comparison
recruit?
of it's a comparison of the level of down bad. But since you're not hip like me, you don't know how the kids are referring to things these days. So,
You're right.
you,
I don't.
what do you know?
I know
But
nothing
but
apparently.
here's what I know is that Canada's got a new coach, and it is Red Bull's own Jesse Marsch. Coming a couple of months after Marsch did not hide his feelings towards current USMNT head coach Greg Berhalter during one of the recent national team cycles, he now gets to have a go at them in future tournaments. And while this is all good and exciting, and we are going to talk about the impact on USMNT as a whole, there is this little nugget about how he was hired and what his official title is, because he's not just the Canada's head men national team coach. He is MLS Canada men's national team head coach as his official title, which
Does
raised a
it
ton of
even? Oh,
eyebrows.
is that because of the like investment from the MLS teams?
Well, it's good to know you've done tons of research, Connor, in preparation for this episode. The title MLS Canada's men's national team head coach is made
Mouthful.
possible due to the philanthropic contributions from owners of CF Montreal, specifically Joey Saputo, Vancouver's ownership group. So is Saputo individually, Vancouver's ownership group, and Toronto's ownership group.
Man,
And
Saputo put more money into the Canada men's national team coach than he has into his own team.
he put a good little bit into it. He said it was from his own charity. Was the from the article. So what a
Yeah,
good
I'm
guy.
sure the Montreal fans would love to benefit from that charity. They've had one
Uh,
DP since like 2020.
well, and I know what the instant reaction is going to be like. Oh, MLS is done killing USL. Now they're moving on to every other soccer continent in the world to take over the world. This name was proposed by the General Secretary of Canadian Soccer himself, Kevin. So for anybody who
Does
thinks Don
anybody have a
Garber,
short title? That's what I want to know. Every
no,
title you've read out is so long.
they're Canadian. They just got to be really nice and give you this nice long proper title, right?
Just want like
Um,
head coach, secretary, general
so
manager.
so anybody who thinks Don Garber is like spreading his reach, like calm down, kids, like relax. But it does highlight the dire need for money that the Canadian Federation is facing right now. They were down so bad before that just a few months ago, their players protested and refused to play due to conditions that they were in. It just immensely in a hole right now. So, Connor, your thoughts on all of this so far that we just covered?
I am
Mainly the not on the USMNT side, but the
the Canada side.
yeah.
I am just happy that Jesse didn't end up with the USMNT because if you pay it,
So ignore the USMNT side in his first sentence. I'm so glad he's not in the USMNT. Did you
yeah.
listen to anything?
No, I don't listen to anything you say. Um, if you listen to like how he's been talking about things in his short commentary stint, I think the guys. If you think Greg is like biased towards MLS players, I think Jesse's even worse than that. I think he is super biased towards MLS players, and I think if he was the US coach, you'd be seeing way more of them in the team. Even though he's had stints in Europe and whatnot, but I wouldn't be surprised. What I was going to say and link that to the Canada thing is I wouldn't be surprised if there's more of a shift to that on the Canadian side. And you see more of like the fringe players that were playing overseas maybe start to get dropped out of the team in favor of guys that are playing in MLS. So I'm thinking guys like obviously Davies and Jonathan David, like they're not getting dropped off the team, but maybe someone like Liam, no, not one of you him, like Ike Ugbo, who's playing with Sheffield Wednesday. Like that's a name where I could see him getting dropped for some other Canadian striker, Prince Owusu or something. Actually, I don't know if Prince Owusu is Canadian, but
He isn't. He just plays on Toronto. So go off.
okay. Well, I mean, it's not a bad guess to guess that the striker for Toronto is maybe Canadian, but some other Canadian striker to bring in instead of him from MLS. So I wouldn't be surprised if he kind of goes down that route. He's got a lot of work to do, and from a Canadian perspective, some of their better defensive players right now, that being everybody on Portland, has been a mess so far this season. So, he's coming into a team that's in bad form, that's been in a bit of disarray, and it's definitely not something to discount. Look at New England. They had disarray at some point last season. We honestly, like, okay, maybe it was just me. I don't know. I don't think I was the only one that thought that it would kind of be over with going into this season, but clearly it's not because the team is still in much disarray. They're sitting bottom. Is it bottom of the league or bottom of the East? Yeah, bottom of the league. And not even tied. Like they are clearly bottom of the league. They've been super poor. In fairness, I think they only have 11 games played, so they can make up for that. But I would not discount the job that Jesse Marsch has to do with this team. But it is a good hiring for Canada, nonetheless. It is a very experienced coach overseas and in MLS. It's a good combination. I think it's the right hire from them, but there's just too much to do for him. Maybe it's a Gary Smith type situation where he has to kind of right the ship, get things stable, and then you bring in someone to take them to the next level. But it's been a lot of buts, but we'll have to wait and see because I don't have the answers.
You never usually do. You usually just say a lot of hypotheticals.
Yeah,
I
well,
don't
that's
think,
how I save my own ass.
which is wrong. You need hard, strong comments. I don't think Ugbo is going anywhere. He's got 11 goals in the championship this season. He's done more than fine, right? But I think your worry should be with somebody like Theo Bair, who's playing at Motherwell, right? Like a low level Scottish team. Is he going to get dropped for somebody like, oh, I don't know, looking just really quickly, Jules Anthony Vilsaint, the CF
Oh,
Montreal guy, CF Montreal striker. He's a youth player who's got 2 goals in 5 games, right? Is that change going to happen? Maybe. Is it going to be the right change? Who knows, right? But I think here's the problem: is that they have had no turnover in like their next group up for a long time, right? I feel like every time you go into a national team picture, it's always the same group. You have the Alfonso Davies breaking in, and you have maybe Ismail Kone, but for the most part, it's been Laren, it's been David, it's been Buchanan, and then it's been some combination of Johnston. You know, somebody needs to give him a chance and see what they can do, and he can put them together. But to go back on that, right, like all the way back, like Canada is $4 million in the hole right now, and this is a national team, like a national federation. So they're not just like starting up business. I mean, they have a business similar to what some was, where they're responsible for raising money and funding things, and it's not gone very well. So the gift that has been given from these Canadian MLS teams, it's not just for Marsh himself; it's for the entire ecosystem, right? It's like wiping out, I don't know, 30% or so of their debt to help boost the economy, right? And here's kind of the thing as it relates to the name itself. I'm going to use your term here. This is a nothing burger, right? Like no one's going to wake up when Copa America rolls around or the World Cup rolls around like, oh my God, MLS Canada head coach Jesse Marsch is here. Woo! MLS. Like, no, right? We're going to show up and it's be like, okay, cool. He's here. Time to see what he can do. Because it doesn't matter what your name is, because everything, I mean, it's not really a soccer thing, but college teams have their head coach named after a donor all the time, right? I think it was something like the Texas volleyball is named after a donor or something like that. Like it's not uncommon in sports. It's just uncommon in soccer, right? So nobody cares. Nobody looks at like, oh, you're named after this, whatever, right? The thing that I first originally thought would be a bigger, interesting talking point was how it impacts the CPL, right? A league very focused on youth development, funding through player sales, trying to build up the youth part of the Canadian national team. You know, would putting MLS's name on your head coach and allowing 3 MLS teams to fund the whole thing and pump money into the league, would that, diminish the impact of the Canadian Premier League? I don't think so. And I might be wrong because I live not in Canada, even though I'm kind of close. CPL is going to grow. It's going to grow at a fine rate, right? It's always going to be the second league or the third league in North America or whatever. But they didn't have the funds to do what Saputo and company did, right? And that's okay, right? They started up in like 2019. That's fine, right? But if you want the whole thing to get better, you have to think outside the box, as the Athletic article said, and that's what they did. Again, nobody's going to wake up in 4 months and be like, "Oh my God, look at this guy who's named after a league," right? Like it's increased investment. It is really, really important for the current state of that national team to take it in and utilize it properly. Now that's going to be the question, right? $1.5 million is great, but if you're not putting that where it needs to go, whether it be the national team coach, which I think, as you mentioned, Jesse, I think is a good hire, or funding your own league to make sure your league doesn't go on, whatever, right? You need to use it properly, and that's something to be keep an eye on, I guess, for lack of a better term, because it's impressive, right? This guy, Kevin Blue, he goes out, he's got no money. They're like, you have zero money. Go find us a new head coach because John Herdman left. And he goes out and gets one of the most in-demand coaches at the time, right? People are still calling Jesse Marsch's name to try and coach club teams, nationally, whatever. Now, he had the money then to do it after this, but he went out and fundraised it, right? He went out and fundraised it, and then he put it towards what it needed to go to. So he's done a good job. Now it's a matter of him, Jesse getting enough out of them to be successful wherever they are.
Are you finally done yapping about MLS?
Brother, what I was talking about the Canadian Premier League for the entire time. What are you talking
It
about?
was not about it. You were talking about how he has the label MLS Canadian men's national team head coach or whatever. But
This is
listen, there's
how.
gonna obviously I know why you're bringing it up because there's gonna be people, of course, that are like, oh, MLS is ruining the Canadian Premier League and they're ruining the Canadian men's national league because they're slapping their name on everything and they want to own everything. And listen, they're gonna anytime MLS's name is mentioned, there's gonna be people like that. I don't even think you should give them the light of day. I think you should just fully ignore them and forget that those people even exist. And we should just, and I know you covered it as well, but I think we should talk about like how Jesse's impact on the team. Like, do we think that like what do they look like now for Copa? Like, what do they look like for the World Cup? Like, are they a serious threat again? Like, there's a lot of guys that are hitting their prime for Copa America, and they'll still be in their prime for the World Cup. Like, are they a threat? Like, are we
Well,
going to see Canada 2.0 in the World Cup?
Mister, I can't wait and be patient. If you allowed me to get to my next transition point, maybe
Well,
we
I'm
would have gotten
transitioning
there.
it for you.
Maybe I'm just gonna hit end on this recording and we're gonna be done because you, sir, have not earned the right to have this conversation because you're Mister. I need everything done right now.
That'd be fine with me. That's less editing I have to do.
Anyways, it begs the question because Jesse was rumored to be leading the USMNT, rumored to be a leading USMNT candidate at one point. Is the USMNT going to regret his choice based off of what he can do with the Canadian national team or what he could have done with the United States national team? So, because you don't like hearing my voice, Connor, I'm going to go here. I'm going to go on mute and listen to you rabble about nonsense for the next 15 minutes.
Oh, finally. This is what we've been waiting for. You're welcome, everybody. I got him to go on mute for once. I think the U.S. is not going to regret missing out on Jesse Marsch. I think I'd like to see, I think we talked about this in the past. I'd like to see like a fully international coach come in with this team because our team at this point is almost solely international players. And a lot of them have spent either like 95% of their time internationally or 100% of their time internationally. So I don't think having an MLS coach like Greg Berhalter is the right way to go. Not because I not because I think Greg's like the worst coach in the world because he used to be an MLS coach and wasn't even successful in MLS. I just don't think the way he wants to play matches with our best players. Our best players play overseas. So I think we should bring in a coach that is from overseas. And obviously, even within that, it's going to be a little bit difficult because Our guys are playing all over the place, a lot in Italy, some in England, some in Germany. But that's the route I'd like to see them take. I'd like to see them go with an international coach. I think bringing in Jesse isn't going to solve the issue. I think we're going to run into the same issues because I think Jesse has a very MLS mindset in his tactical approach as well. I'm sure some of the international coaching has rubbed off a bit on him as well. I'm not saying he'd be worse or even like at the same level as Greg. I'm sure he'd be a bit better, but I think there's even another step that we could take if we bring in somebody international. Whether or not that's really realistic, I don't know with the money situation. But hey, I mean, if Canada can have all their owners pay to hire the head coach, who's to say that we have like how many teams that are American in MLS? If they all just chip in a little bit of money, all of a sudden we could pay the coach. So let's go get like a Jose Mourinho and have 27 MLS teams chip in like a couple mil each. And all of a sudden now we have one of the best coaches in the world coaching our national team.
Sorry, we can't do that because that's kind of what we did to build our brand new state of the art training facility. And now everybody's up in arms because MLS is controlling the U.S. men's national team too. Don't you know that? Don't you know we can't do that?
You're being such an MLS shill right now. I don't like this.
um,
Cancel them. Get them.
I went in three different directions with this. So the first one was Jesse ever going to be brought in before the World Cup anyway? And that answer, of course, was no. Right. They had the opportunity to bring him in during the rehiring process. They passed. So anybody who thought that we were going to magically fire Greg and bring in Jesse, nope, not happening. And I think it's just silly to even think that that would have been a possibility. Then I looked at if we did for, let's play in a magical world where he does, would he even be better than Greg? And that's a what if for the ages, right? And we go back, and you kind of mentioned a little bit, we go back to the conversation a lot of, what level of coach do we need to get the best out of our EuroLeague heavy roster? You mentioned international. I'm along the same boards with you for the men's national team, where Greg's probably not the guy, right? We've talked about that copious amounts of times. Jesse, even though he has that EuroLeague experience, heavy pressing style, wants to dominate the attacking third, the middle third, and leave our back line in 1v1, battles, right? I think that he would end up turning our more creative, impactful, players, Pulisic, Reyna, whatever, Weah, into just these high pressing, grunts that are looking to just win the ball, win the ball, win the ball, and then once we get it, just get it up there quickly, right? And he does have moments where that doesn't happen, and he tries to keep the ball a little bit better, and that's fine. But for the most part, that's his style, right? I think his style benefits a midfielder like Weston McKennie and Tyler Adams, who are just all over there, just destroying the ball and carrying it. And, that's their style. But net negative when he hinders the ability of, players in possession like Pulisic, Reyna, Weah, things like that. I agree. I think the coach needs to have a lot of European League experience and a track record of success in those leagues, right? You can't just be some Joe Schmo who was in the Scandinavian third division because that doesn't work, right?
That was Greg.
Yeah, you're right. That was, yeah, you're right. And then finally, does Jesse make Canada better? 100%. I think he's a perfect fit, right? Man motivator, coach whose tactics are very strong, but very much relies on athleticism and controlling the hectic chaos of the game, right? Creating chaos, make it hectic, and then control it. And that, I mean, on the field, that's one thing, but that's also what Canada is right now. It's a bunch of hectic chaos, and he's looking to control it, right? So it's a good fit, both metaphorically and whatever. But they have talent, no doubt, right? You're looking at this roster of players who most are playing either in MLS or overseas, and they're talented. Don't get me wrong, but at the end of the day, the technical side of it isn't quite up to the level for the majority of the roster, where a coach, again, I'll just use one who's on the free agent market right now. If Jose Mourinho came into the Canadian national team, I think he struggles because he expects a certain level. Canada's not at that level. Not all of their players at least. There are some players who he can work with, and that's fine. So when you're getting ready for these big tournaments, the World Cup included, and mainly the headliner, it is what can we do to get ourselves the best results possible with our players? And Jesse is a motivator. I mean, I remember watching that clip of him against Liverpool, right, in the Champions League, where he was down and he motivated these guys to to play a roster that's 3 times his payroll and compete with them to the very end, right? That's the sort of coach that they need right now. And I'm not saying that's the long-term answer, but it can be a stopgap until they get themselves into, a stable financial situation and continue producing players through CPL or wherever it may be. He might be the perfect fit for them.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. I think he's a good guy to, like we said with Gary Smith, he's a good guy to lay the groundwork, get the ship righted in the correct direction, and then if you want to take the team to the next level, I think you go outside of Jesse Marsch.